I'm Leah.
Welcome to Family Heritage Living. Today we'd like to talk about homesteading. What makes a homesteader?
There seems to be a lot of question out there in cyberspace, on YouTube and blogs, of what actually defines a homesteader. Do they have to have so much land? Do they have to have so many animals? Do they have to live out in the middle of nowhere to actually be considered a homesteader? And we'd like to just share our opinion and thoughts on what actually defines someone who decides to homestead and what really makes them a homesteader, not just by name, because it's like being a Christian. You can call yourself a Christian, but it doesn't make you a Christian. A lot of people are Christians and don't call themselves Christians. And I think that's the same way in the world of homesteading.
It is. We started out our homesteading adventure journey back in the mid-90s.
Yep, 1997 is when we really began.
At,
Although it started in our
prior.
minds and our hearts prior to that, yes.
Yeah, we were living in the city, and my wife, there was a antique store that we passed by a lot, an older couple, we really admired them, and there was an old home comfort cook stove there that she fell in love with.
And that was because the lady that owned the store had one in her kitchen.
Yeah.
Now, she also had an electric stove as well, but she had one actually operating in her kitchen, and it just floored me because I saw the one in the antique store not as something that would just sit there, but they could actually be functional, and I was just totally fascinated by the whole thought of it.
You were. I was not.
No, he was not.
It took a few years for me to actually get it hooked up. We had moved by then into an old farmhouse, and we did end up getting the home comfort hooked up. I had some rework to do on it and stuff, but after we got it hooked up and started using it, I fell in love with it too.
And I was petrified at that moment, though. This was great in my mind that I was going to get to cook on this stove that I had longed for years, and finally had it, and it sat in our kitchen in the city for a couple of years. Now all of a sudden he was hooking it up, and he was all excited about it, and I was petrified because all I could think about is we're going to burn our house down because we are greenhorns. We have no idea what in the world we're doing.
Right. And that was, almost 20 years ago. So we've been living the homestead lifestyle for almost 20 years. Does that make us, experts or know-it-alls or?
Actually, it does, and a lot of things on not to do. We are very, very well schooled in mistakes and things. Please don't do these things. We can share those things and tell you that we are experts in that area.
Yeah. A lot of it has been trial and error. Some things we've tried have worked very well. Other things we've tried have not worked at all, and some things we just keep, trying and trying and trying until we find what works, or if it's not going to work.
Back in the 90s, when we first got the homesteading bug, and we were introduced to the magazine Countryside.
Yep.
I think the whole title of it is Countryside Livestock, Small Livestock Journal, something along those lines. Anyways, very big in the reinvent of the homesteading movement in the 70s. J.D. Bellinger was the founder and editor for many years. He's since passed it on to his I believe his son as editor, but he's still active in writing. But what amazed us was that, because in our minds, back in the city and we were getting the homesteading bug, you always think big. You think homesteaders have to have hundreds of acres or have to, have all these different skills just to actually be considered a homesteader. And JD's philosophy was that homesteading is a state of mind. And he would push over and over and over in his articles that, because it's a reader-written magazine, which is really, really neat. And you can get copies of these. They're still writing today. You can get new copies. Although we really have found that because editors have switched, and don't get this wrong, his son's a fine editor and everything, but we really like JD's style of writing and the way he produced the magazine. It felt very much, it just had a different feel. So that was the 90s and the 2000s, and when we could get old issues in the 80s, which we were able to do for a long time.
Yep.
Those are the magazines we really liked. But you can get these on eBay if you're all interested in finding out about any of the old articles written by J.D. Bellinger. And the readers give testimonies of what they've done. Some people have had hundreds of acres. Some people have just had, an acre, half an acre. But that was J.D.'s whole point, was homesteading is a state of mind, and regardless of where you're at, if you feel the need to become the least bit more self-sufficient in the world that we live in, you don't have to have 10, 20, 30 acres. You
Right.
can do it if you're living in an apartment. You can bucket garden. You can bake bread. You can grind wheat. Anything you could do that give yourself a little bit of independence to feed that hankering inside and make it grow was what he encouraged. And what did he say about the being most productive on what?
Yeah, I don't remember exactly where they were living, but he stated that they were more productive. I think it was just an acre,
I think it was too, just an
or
acre.
just a very small acre, just an acre or two. They were more productive on that small plot of land than they've been everywhere else they've lived with, tens and hundreds of acres. So I guess that's why we say homesteading. A lot of it is the state of mind, and just being productive where you're at. Where you're at. Maybe where you're at. Maybe it'll change over time. Maybe it'll have to change, or whatever the
Maybe it can't
situation.
change. Maybe your circumstances are set in stone, and
Yeah.
you are where you are. But you can certainly, if you feel like you have a desire to do something in the homesteading realm, there are absolutely things that you can do regardless of your situation. We've seen lots of people that have had. I'll give you an example of someone we personally knew. They were on a couple hundred acres,
Yep.
and they, to the best of their ability, they utilized that 100 acres very well. Or 200 acres, but they rented out quite a bit of it to a farmer to plant or to field. What's the word I'm looking for? They rented out. I have to cut this out, won't I?
Nope.
They rented out to a farmer to
Lease. Just
to
leased
lease.
out the land.
So she ended up with just a few acres as far as for where the animals went and stuff. But she did still get the bale hay and stuff and all that fun stuff that we associate with being a homesteader or a farmer. And situations happened, and they ended up having to move. And she moved to, I believe it was
5 acres.
was it 5? I can't remember if it was 5 or 3. But she is just as productive on that 5 acres as she ever was on the 200 that she had. And that's because her state of mind was she was a homesteader regardless of where she was at. We have seen people that have had 100 or more acres that we've known people, in a city lot that was more of a homesteader than the ones on the 100 or so acres, because the one on the 100 acres didn't have the homesteading state of mind, where the city person that wanted to be a little bit more self-sufficient, they did have that state of mind, and they were going to do something for their family and themselves regardless of what their circumstances were. So again, it's not what you have or where you're at, but what you're going to do with the situation.
That's exactly right. I think a lot of the thought is having being off grid or being so far out away from everybody, to need to be isolated, off the beaten path, miles and miles away from everybody, and that's surely not the case. We can be, we surely can be productive like that, and in a setting like that.
But I think, most people who get the homesteading state of mind or start to feel the bug aren't in that situation. And they can
Right.
let their current situation slow them down or hinder them. And, it really shouldn't. There's skills to learn in a small area that can be transferred to a large area. But some people will wait to learn those skills until they transfer to a large area, and either the large area never happened, so they miss out on a lot of experiences they could have had, insight they could share with others if they've just bloomed where they were at, or if they're waiting and they do get to move to a larger area, now all of a sudden they're a little overwhelmed because they really have no foundation on which to grow on. So again, another perspective from J.D. Bellinger was, learn those skills for that purpose. Get some experience under your belt so that you can take it with you should circumstances change for you. For us, it's never been our ideal circumstance where we've been homesteading. We've homesteaded in 4 different places, including Arkansas.
Yeah, 4 different places.
And none of those places were ever our dream idea. But we did do many things within our power to try to make them more our idea. Our big dream was to be off-grid, and it has always been off-grid.
Yep. Well, off-grid is a widely used term. Yeah,
ours would be not to have any source of power. No wind, no solar, no generator, no electrical.
Yep.
But the houses that we've always been able to buy, because back in the 90s, when we started homesteading, the internet was not like it is today. Right. And one thing that always kept us kind of in check is we had children and we had responsibilities, and
had to have a job.
Had to have a job. Ron's dream has been to go up north. 18 since you've been 18.
Yeah, pretty much my entire adult life.
Jobs weren't real plentiful and still aren't real plentiful up there. That has hindered us, but times change. We've learned, we now make our living on the internet, and by the grace of the good Lord, we're able to getting ready to make our move to a remote off-grid location. Mm-hmm. But that's only because the internet's available, and we're able to do that. Now there's a catch-22.
There is. We
still have to have some type of power to run our business, which requires a bunch of different saws and stuff. So
tools.
We have to have a generator for that in order to continue to pay our bills and to fulfill our dream of being up north. But the cabin's going to be completely off-grid.
Yep.
But in the meantime, in the past, since 1997, what are some things that we have done to feel more connected to the off-grid mentality that we've wanted? Not everybody's dream of being a homesteader is off-grid, and that doesn't have to be.
Right.
That's the whole thing, is to say to Mayan, everybody's vision is different to what makes somebody a homesteader.
Well, I think a lot of that is, I think the first thing we got rid of, actually you got rid of, because a lot of it, excuse me, does hit the woman of the house, I think, more than the man. I think the first thing we got rid of was the electric dryer.
The microwave.
Was the microwave first?
Microwave. Back in in town, we got rid of the microwave. The
microwave was first, Woo! But that was a huge step.
That was probably around 1995, before we ever thought of moving.
As silly as it sounds. The next thing we got rid of was the electric dryer.
Yeah. Now there was a catch-22 there. What prompted us was the cost, but it also, because it was extremely expensive in this old farmhouse that we had, and it just made sense to, not have it any longer.
Put up a clothesline.
It also fed our desire to be disconnected from the electric grid.
Yep.
Because we really didn't want to be. It was growing in us. We really couldn't put it into words. Were we using kerosene lamps half the time when we had, electricity? I mean, people were looking at us like we were nuts. And they still do, but that's okay. We're okay with that.
Yeah.
The electric dryer, and that was very hard to adjust to because we go through an enormous amount of clothes. By then we had goats and chickens, and Ron worked at that time in the auto body industry, so
just a lot of chore clothes and dirty clothes, and but anyway, got rid of the microwave, the dryer.
Coffee pot.
I don't know, why didn't we go to a gas dryer? Well, we'd still have, still got to be plugged into the outlet for the electrical part. We got rid of a lot of our electric lights, the
coffee any
pots,
electric appliance.
Blenders and mixers and stuff like that. She gave up. I say she gave up. It's not like that, but We don't have an electric range stove, gas ranger stove. She uses completely the wood stove. TVs,
Anything that made us feel
a lot of that stuff.
claustrophobic.
Yeah, a lot of that stuff binds you.
It does.
You throw your clothes in the dryer, and they'll be done in a half an hour, and you can be on your way doing something else. Or and it just seems like a lot of that stuff hurries you up, so you can do more stuff that really doesn't matter. I don't know. At least to us.
There are people that want to be homesteaders, that they want all the amenities, and that's great. That's fine. That works for them. That's what it's about. Is finding in anything in life. It's finding what works best for your family. How you feed your family, how you take care of your family, how you doctor your family. Excuse me. Homesteading is the same way. Whatever works best for your family makes your family flow. But I think the whole point in this video is to encourage anyone who even has the littlest bug that just doesn't feed that bug because they just feel that their location just
Stuck
isn't
in a situation.
There are little things that you can do to go ahead and feed that bug, and maybe it'll even satisfy it. Maybe you won't want to feed it any further, or maybe you'll find out, wow, you know what? Yeah, this is a dream that's been